Love and loss at Grenfell Tower 1 year on.
Lean on me when you're not strong.
On the hardest of days, a community holds on to one another. Across the country and beyond, at midday, 72 seconds of silence for the 72 who died. And in the shadow of the tower and its tragedy, how they're raising the next generation.
Our grief is slowly going away, but it's still in us.
There's a bit of sadness for the people that have lost their lives, but there's a bit of happiness because all the staff and teachers are supporting us no matter what.
On the first anniversary of one of Britain's biggest peacetime disasters, we hear from those who in their darkest hour brought out the best in humanity, also on News at 10. Back to the brink, only 2 days since the last one, a new Brexit crisis for the PM tonight. It's all going to plan so far, Putin's delight as Russia wins the opening match of the World Cup, and a masterclass from Her Majesty. The Queen shows Meghan the royal ropes.
This is ITV News at 10 with Julie Etchingham at Grenfell Tower.
Good evening from West London, where Grenfell Tower, behind us here, the scene of so much horror a year ago, was the centre of so much sorrow today. A few hours ago in the roads around here, thousands of people walked in a silent column of solidarity, as they have every 14th of the month for exactly 1 year. This evening, that column was longer and the silence weighed that little bit heavier. And silence was a theme of the day here and across the country in memory of the 72 people lost to the smoke, the flames and the trauma. The bitter sense of injustice felt by so many here was not hidden, but on this highly charged day, it was restrained.
In dignified silence, they marched tonight. More than 5,000 people, some carrying the images of those lost a year ago today. They were joined, as they were 12 months ago, by members of the London Fire Brigade, lining the route, helmets placed on the ground in respect. An act of solidarity at the end of a day spent remembering those who perished and those whose lives changed forever on June the 14th, 2017. Earlier, survivors, bereaved families and many, many more who just wanted to show their support gathered in the shadow of the tower that became a grave to stand in silence and remember those lost that dreadful night. "72 seconds silence, a second for every life." They remembered too at special services in churches alongside the tower. At Fire Brigade headquarters, they shared the loss they tried but were unable to prevent.
A minute's silence, colleagues.
Parliamentary business was paused out of respect. Royal business too, the Queen and the Duchess of Sussex remembering Grenfell in Chester. Commemorations had begun much earlier. The ruined tower illuminated in green at the exact time flames were lighting the skyline a year ago. Other buildings also bathed in the colour chosen to represent this community. Even the lights on the London Eye switched to green. Along with Downing Street, still dealing with the issues that Grenfell has highlighted. there have been dozens of events throughout the day, and these West London streets still dominated by the ruined tower, including the symbolic release of white doves.
Jessica Urbano, Ligaya Moore.
And the reading of the names of the 72 members of this community who perished.
Fatima Shakir, Munira Shakir, Nadia Shakir, Soraya Shakir, Zainab Shakir, Bassem Shakir, forever in our hearts.
The mood was sombre and respectful, but Clary Mendy, who led tonight's march and who lost 2 cousins in the fire, says behind the respect there is still determination to obtain justice.
This Grenfell Tower has opened Pandora's box, and what's coming out of it is very ugly.
But she told me that is for another day. Today's priority is clear.
We're here to commemorate. We don't want anger. We don't want to blame game these 2 days. It's out of respect.
At the foot of the tower, high-profile supporters of the Grenfell cause, like singer Adele and the grime artist Stormzy, joined a gospel choir in an emotional rendition of Lean on Me.
You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem having you understand. We all need somebody to oh, yeah, lean on me when you're not strong.
A community still grieving, but leaning on each other and finding comfort and strength in that. Paul Davis, News at 10.
Well, at the heart of everything that has happened here today, of course, have been the victims of the fire. In photos and on posters, their faces in carefree times have shone through the acts of remembrance. 72 people lost. That is, of course, the most sobering number, but there are others too. As a result of the fire, 203 households were left homeless. Of those, 52 are living in temporary accommodation, while 68 households are still living in what's described as emergency accommodation, like hotel rooms, a year on. There is also deep suffering among many of those who survived. Some 1,500 adults and children have so far received mental health treatment, and many more, 11,000, are thought to have experienced some kind of mental health difficulties. Well, the building behind us, even in the fading light of a midsummer's evening, dominates the skyline, constantly calling to mind the awful events of a year ago. The shock they caused is never far from the surface. But beneath the tower's outline, in the streets below, lives are lived, work is done, and school days start and finish.
They're growing up in the shadow of tragedy. And for those that live here, it dominates their lives like it dominates their landscape.
Obviously, a year ago, we all experienced something really, really sad and traumatising.
8 families from this school lived in the tower. Many lost friends and family, and 1 pupil died. The trauma touched everyone.
My godmother could hear the screams from her room.
And how did you help to overcome that?
Just hearing that, it terrified me.
This anniversary, the school is drawing close as a community. Those who survived must grow up with memories of those who didn't.
Dear Lord, thank you for helping me, my mum and my sister come out safely. Amen. Our grief is slowly going away, but it's still in us.
There's a bit of sadness for the people that have lost their lives, but there's a bit of happiness because all the staff and teachers are supporting us no matter what.
We're so incredibly committed to making sure that our school is not defined, and our children are not defined by this terrible tragedy, but they have that message of hope for the future.
When the tears fall. Meanwhile, life has had to carry on in this corner of West London. For local businesses, there was a time before Grenfell and a time after. Two different realities.
Trauma still lives in everybody, myself, peers, people, locals. It still actually is here within the people. It hasn't left them as yet. I don't think it will leave anytime soon either. I think it's a long run ahead.
Some businesses say they've suffered, but Grenfell brings a whole new perspective.
We have a lot of sympathy for the poor people that were involved there, and that overrides our thoughts and the problems we may have mentally, really, in terms of having to confront that daily.
All those working close to the tower say they can't escape its reality or its legacy.
Everyone, it was like it's a mental strain, it still is, because, you know, we can't forget. There's no way to forget.
Unless you have to live next to it, you'll only know how it feels.
Tarek Gotti was one of the first to rush to help on the night and has been helping survivors ever since. But now he's become ill from the strain.
You want to forget it, but when you walk out of your door and you look at it, you drop your son at school, you think it was the same time I used to walk with the other kids who are gone. I sometimes feel like maybe it should have been me and my children, not them. I wish I can erase it and go back again and pretend it never happened. Well, you can't.
Children can't unsee what their eyes have seen, but they are being supported to deal with it. It'll take many years for life after the fire here to resemble anything like it was before last year's tragedy. Penny Marshall, News at 10, West London.
Well, I'm joined now by Pastor Derek Wilson from the nearby Tabernacle Christian Centre, and you've been helping the families of the victims right from the very beginning, Pastor, haven't you? What are your memories of that day?
My memories of that day is very emotional. Obviously waking up and seeing that tower on fire, and then heading off to our church to see such unprecedented amount of people coming from all over the community as well as outside of the community as donations were being poured in for the survivors.
And it was extraordinary, wasn't it? Because the faith communities all across this area really stepped up to the plate immediately, where the authorities simply were left behind and weren't doing anything.
Absolutely, everyone came together, faith communities as well as community centres. We all got together in our different places, and we just got straight in, really, with what we were expecting from the council.
And you were opening the churches thinking that people might be coming in for reflection, and they became centres of practical help. Just tell me a bit.
It became crisis centre, really, because we had so many people coming in, offering their service, offering their help, because donations were just coming in from all over the country, as well as people going out to hotels to find these survivors, to let them know that there are donations here. People are going out there to give them support, moral support, spiritual support, and just to let them know that, hey, we're here for you.
There is still a lot of anger underneath the silences and the grief of today, not least in the fact that so many still have not been rehoused.
Well, that is really astounding. A year on to the date, people are still in hotels. And what is going on, it's on the lips of everybody, really. This is a 21st century Britain, a richest borough in Europe, and we still have, a year on, survivors in hotels. It's just not acceptable.
And for you personally, Pastor, you could never have imagined that this might be part of your ministry. How are you a year on?
Thank God, God's grace has really been keeping not just myself, but our congregation, because we've all been involved. Our centre is still open. We have over 100 families on our books, and they're still coming in to receive not only donation, but support, a place of reflection, a place of safety. And they remember us a year on because we've been out there in the hotels, reaching out to them.
Pastor Derek Wilson, thank you very much indeed, and all of our best wishes to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, even before the fire here, some councils around the UK were already thinking about ending high-rise living, bringing down blocks like Grenfell Tower, expensive to maintain and now perceived as potentially dangerous. Scotland's biggest social housing landlord, North Lanarkshire Council, is planning to bring down all 48 it owns. They'll be dismantled and demolished over the next 20 years, so slowly does it. Even so, many people who call them home will be sorry to see them go.
Britain's urban landscape is a constant work in progress, but nowhere perhaps is it changing faster than here in North Lanarkshire. The concrete tower blocks which have punctuated this skyline for decades are coming down. All of them.
Our plan is to knock down 48 tower blocks all across North Lanarkshire. It's quite a bold plan.
All of your stock?
All of our stock's going to come down.
That's more than 4,000 high-rise homes to be demolished over the next 20 years or so. The decision wasn't prompted by Grenfell, but that tragedy 400 miles away did reaffirm the council's belief that they're doing the right thing.
It's only right that everybody learns lessons from Grenfell, but I'd say our programme is more about looking to the housing of the future and how we can make sure our residents are happy and what we can offer in terms of being nearer town centres, accessible, adaptable and environmentally friendly housing.
New flats for old in the Gorbals.
Half a century ago, this was the future. Slums replaced by luxurious, modern living in the sky. The Queen opened them, and her reign has outlived them. Too often, the vision never really delivered.
She met members of the Housing Committee.
But not everyone will be happy to see them go. We found these ladies enjoying a craft class in the communal area of a Motherwell Tower block, earmarked for demolition. There is still a community spirit here, they told me, a vertical village where neighbours are friends.
I'm quite happy in my tower. I don't know, I just feel this is the same, it's secure and you know where you are, you know your neighbours and you know, I mean, the towers are kept lovely. There's no need to move, no.
I like living here and it's a good community and it's great for everybody to get together. But I've got mobility problems and see since the fire in Grenfell, I'm terrified. Because I'm scared in case there's a fire and I can't get out. I'm on the 8th floor.
And that's the key to all this, say experts. Listening and caring. Tower blocks will still work as long as the residents can trust the landlords.
There's nothing wrong with the concept. It's absolutely just making people feel that they're safe, they're secure and they're being listened to. If you feel that your landlord, be it a social landlord, be a private landlord, is responding to your needs, is actually making the repairs and improving the quality of the house, make it more energy efficient, then that's what you're after. The actual, whether it's a high-rise, whether it's a bungalow, is less relevant than actually the quality of the stock inside.
North Lanarkshire's plans are radical for sure. Not every council will tear down its towers after Grenfell, but North London's tragedy has prompted planners nationwide to refocus and rethink where and how we should live. Martin Geisler, News at 10, Motherwell.
On to today's other news now, and it might be profitable, but Rolls-Royce Engineering, the business that makes plane engines, is cutting jobs, and mostly in Britain. 4,600 will go to reduce costs. The company claims there'll be an admin and middle management. The unions warn the company against cutting too deep and too fast.
Derby is where the Rolls-Royce story began and where the full force of today's announcement will be felt. 3,000 jobs are going here at the company's historic headquarters.
This is a very tough decision for us because, you know, people in Derby are incredibly proud of Rolls-Royce. Many of them have worked for Rolls-Royce for a long time. However, we absolutely need to secure the future of Rolls-Royce in Derby.
Rolls-Royce engines power aircraft like the Boeing Dreamliner. The company has had a host of problems with its Trent 1000 engine, but is making money again and the order book is heaving. Thousands of middle managers and support staff are being laid off to make Rolls-Royce more competitive. The engineering team is untouched, union members unaffected, which may explain why the union sounds so relaxed.
We're hopeful that this rationalisation, once it's completed, will put the company on a footing that it continue to be successful moving forward.
Warren East cut jobs at Rolls-Royce in the name of efficiency shortly after becoming chief executive in 2015. Since then, the US hedge fund ValueAct Capital has bought a large stake in the business and installed a partner on the board. So was East under pressure to cut again?
Well, this idea is about making Rolls-Royce competitive and fit for the future. And that's very much the brief that I had when I came in, actually before our largest shareholder joined the register. So this hasn't anything to do with any one shareholder. This is good for all shareholders.
Rolls-Royce excels at the sort of highly skilled engineering the government wants Britain to excel at. So a leaner, meaner Rolls-Royce is in the national economic interest, although that will mean little to many in Derby tonight. Joel Hills, News at 10.
In the story that is Brexit, there have been a few last-minute government compromises in the past few months to try to avoid potentially damaging defeats in the House of Commons. There was one on Tuesday, you may remember. Well, today it fell apart. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is at Westminster tonight. Carl, what happened then?
Well, we had a late afternoon of high drama behind closed doors, Julie. Just before 4 o'clock, those Remainers who were persuaded not to rebel on Tuesday by the Prime Minister herself, they thought they had an agreement with the government that would allow Parliament a say in what the government should do if there was no Brexit deal. Now, the Brexiteers have always been opposed to Parliament having that much say. It seems the Brexit Secretary, David Davis, intervened, and when the government proposals were actually published at 5 o'clock, the Remainers found that they only gave Parliament the chance to talk about Brexit, not to tell the government what to do in that no-deal circumstance. Some of them were very, very cross. There were mutterings about bad faith and betrayal. But the Remainers had taken the precaution of retabling their original tougher amendment in the House of Lords, which is where this goes next week. And where all that leaves us is that next week we are facing exactly the same battle with more anger and less trust. And although I know many people find this all deeply tedious, it is important because it's about who's in charge if Brexit goes south, the government or Parliament.
Carl, thank you very much indeed. Well, to the start of the World Cup now, and if President Putin had been able to order the result of the opening game in Moscow, he could not have chosen a better one from a Russian point of view anyway. The home nation, 70th in the world rankings, managed to beat Saudi Arabia, 3 places above them, 5-0. A rock and roll start for Russia then. Well, there is rarely a better way to learn than from an expert. So, in the royal education of Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, today was a red letter day, her first day of joint engagements with the Queen.
It was a day of new experiences for the Duchess of Sussex, and it began with a sleepover on the royal train to Runcorn. The Queen, you will note, had chosen today to wear green, her personal tribute to Grenfell. And then it was time to be shown the royal ropes. First stop, opening a bridge. Today's was one across the Mersey. You could call it training, and the trainer was Meghan's grandmother-in-law, or as her family call her on official duties, the boss. But it was clear today that doesn't mean you can't have some fun on the job.
Meghan Markle has been a member of the royal family for fewer than 4 weeks. Who better then to give the training course than the woman who's been doing it for more than 9 decades.
But experience doesn't mean predictable, which at one point left the Duchess not knowing which car door to use to get into the state Bentley, only to find the Queen had shuffled along the seat. Safely in the car, they moved to Chester, where it would be fair to say there were a few people waiting. And what the Queen did on one side of the street, the Duchess was doing on the other.
What do you think it was?
Induction.
An induction.
Yeah. It was very much this is how you do things. So.
Here's a plaque. Here's how you open a bridge.
Yeah, yeah. Who better to learn off than the Queen?
So bridges opened, plaques unveiled, crowds waved to. The only thing missing today was planting a tree, but that will surely come. Chris Ship, News at 10, Cheshire.
Finally tonight, a year on from the fire here, what happened is even now still hard to process. It was overwhelming in the loss of life. The human and logistical challenge is unfathomable. There is no manual on how to deal with all of that on your doorstep. But at the Al-Manar Mosque, they did more than cope. It became a refuge, a warehouse for donated clothes, a space where grief was understood and accepted, where in the days after the disaster, panic slowly subsided, where faith did not divide. At the worst of times, it was there that the best of people could be seen.
The Al-Manar Mosque has become so much more than just a place of worship. In the aftermath of the fire on its doorstep, it became the focus for helping the wider community, reaching out to those of all faiths and of none. Then, as now, the mosque had been busy with Muslims marking iftar, breaking of their Ramadan fast after dark. Ahmed Ali heard about the fire a few streets away and knew immediately their food, drink and shelter had to be offered to the survivors of the fire.
I saw the caretaker of the mosque here, and I told him, can you go and open the mosque? And he wasn't sure. He was looking at me, what are you talking about? I said, no, go and open the door for the people. And then that's when a lot of people were directed to come to here.
So this is a kitchen, is it? Among them, Zahira Gaswala, who travelled 10 miles that night to cook food in a mosque she'd never set foot in before.
It's just brought people together. It's like we've attached the puzzles and we've become one picture. Everybody was in their corners. I've met so many new people, so many inspiring people. It's like it's my mosque, my people here, and it's just made us so attached, like we're DNA all together.
Those who stepped up embody the essence of what a mosque or church or temple should really be about.
It stood true to its values on that day and the weeks that came afterwards, where the mosque opened its doors and allowed everyone and anyone to come and contribute and help out. And I think that was a true, illustration of why we need institutions like this in the UK and particularly in the city, to not only be a place of worship but also be a place of service to our community as well.
Like Omar, Tabassum Awan continues to offer solace to survivors as she did in those first hours.
I remember one guy coming in, he had lost his brother in the tower, he was Christian, and he wanted to light a candle, so he placed it downstairs by the entrance, and he just thanked us, and he was just so grateful, and he's like, I know I'm Christian and I'm here in this mosque doing this, and it meant a lot to him, and that shows the beauty of this place, making it so open and welcome.
The people of Al-Manar Mosque continue to give their time and love to those affected by Grenfell, a commitment forged in adversity, but one that will endure as long as it's needed. Dan Rivers, News at 10.
And that is News at 10 for tonight, on a day that a community already knitted together by loss and grief drew closer still to honour and remember the victims of the Grenfell Tower fire. From me and everyone on the programme, good night.